Good afternoon, everyone. Waiting for Councillor Kuster to turn her audio off. Okay, reboot. Welcome to the District of Sechelt Committee of the Whole meeting for April 27th, 2022. The time is 3:01 p.m. And I would like to call this meeting to order and recognize that we are doing our business today on the unceded territory of the Sechelt Nation, and grateful to be here doing so. At this time, I'll ask any councillors for declarations of conflict. And seeing none. Any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll ask for adoption of the agenda. And second? And all in favor? We have no new business or appointments and delegations, so we'll go on to 5.1, our zoning bylaw. And I'm going to turn it over to Director Allen, who's joining us from the presentation center in his office.
Thank you, Chair Rowan. Yes, I am presently upstairs for purpose of ease of this presentation. And after that's complete, I'll be happy to head downstairs to further the discussion in person as we can. Okay, great. So again, thank you. And on behalf of the planning team here, I'm very pleased to, at long last, present Zoning Bylaw 580 to you. I do acknowledge it's been a true team effort, and that team includes folks that have long since moved on. There have been a number of iterations of this bylaw, and the current planning staff picked it up, and in the last 2.5 years, we really reshaped it, rebuilt it, and then really since the fall, we then brought in some consultant assistance from Urban Systems to look at it from a consistency perspective, industry standard, and so forth. Finally brought it into a shape and a form that makes sense for a draft. And it has been a huge challenge for us. Bylaw 25 has got a number of site-specific zones, pre-approved uses, some of which we've done in the last couple of years, some of which have a legacy that date back many years. And so it's been a challenge to weave it all together. And we think we're very close to that. We are open-minded, noting that this is a presentation for acceptance and first reading of the bylaw, noting that there will be changes along the way, as well as property owners and applicants who might be affected by change. And we'll do the best we can to massage the final product from here. So if I may, I will share my screen. That doesn't look like the right one. Pardon me. Minor glitch. I hit the wrong button somewhere along the line, and now I don't see everyone. That was off to a tough start. I'm not sure what I did. Stop to share. Start again. Okay, let's see if I can do this one more time. Okay, I trust everyone can see the front title page there.
Nope.
So no, not. Huh, it's really glitching.
Oh, here we go. Now we see you and the presentation. Do you see us?
I see you. You see my PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. It's something unusual is occurring here. So I'll just walk you through a little bit of what I'll do today in the next few minutes here. I'm going to describe the project plan, a bit of a refresher. I'm sure Council is well aware of what we are doing here, but just a quick refresher. And then I'll outline the composition of the draft bylaw, how we lay out the bylaw. And then I'll do a bit of a deeper dive into the zones. And then follow with that, just a quick touch upon the general use in the parking section. And then the timelines for how we see this moving forward. And then finally, We'll get into some recommendations, what we're looking for today as well as next week, and then next steps in terms of engagement and referrals and so forth. Okay, so fundamentally, what we're looking to do here is repeal Zoning Bylaw 25 and replace it with Zoning Bylaw 580. And we're hoping to modernize the zoning regulations, simplify many of the zones, increase the visual appeal, the user friendliness of the document, and primarily implementing the official community plan, as well as our vision plan. The official community plan first received readings in 2010, was adopted in 2011. And a lot of the policies containing from their land use and density and so forth are now reflected in this zoning bylaw. And a lot of those ideas originally came from the vision plan, and it dates back to 2007. So while 2007 might seem like a while ago, a lot of the content really is relevant. And I do recall from my participation in that project at that time, a vision plan, of course, was a forward thinking into the future document. So really see some great synergy there, and that's reflected in the zoning bylaw as well as the summary document that staff have created. And so it's really quite interesting, quite neat to see that evolution of our vision and into current implementation. But fundamentally, OCP compliance here is the key to our success. We really want to adopt this zoning bylaw without having to amend the OCP. And so that OCP sets the vision and the tone here. And as staff were debating many of these issues, it was always the OCP was our North Star, if you will. We're tethering all our decisions to that. And so we had to have that internal debate about, are we trying to solve all things zoning related, or are we trying to effectively implement our OCP and take the right step forward? And so some of the highlights that you'll see in the zoning bylaw might be clarity on second homes, accessory dwellings, or maybe perhaps more commonly referred to as guest cottages or laneway housing. Increased support on backyard agriculture, chickens, growing of food, so forth, as well as some updated regulatory pieces on fences and walls and setbacks, and so forth. Introducing some new zones. Again, I'll get into that. One of the key introductions of a new zone is a zone that applies to agricultural land reserve properties, as an example, as well as a mixed use zone in the East Porpoise Bay area. This is that working waterfront OCP designation, and we're the attempt to find the appropriate balance between residential and tourist, commercial, marine, industrial uses. One might think that these uses aren't compatible, but we do see an introduction of all of those uses in the East Porpoise Bay area, and there is some acknowledgement of that in the official community plan. And so description here on how the bylaw is categorized. We have 4 parts to the zoning bylaw. Each part contains sections, and that's our fundamental layout. Many zoning bylaws start with definitions and general use and so forth, but we know from experience, both with our use as planners as well as public and property owners and so forth, fundamentally folks want to see the zones. What zone are they in? What does it mean? So we have looked at some more modern zoning bylaws, and we found an example that really suited us well, and that's how we're going to use it. We start right with the zones. And then, so that's part 1. And then part 2 is a general use section. General use contains regulations that may apply broadly throughout a variety of zones and include more detail and provisions on items like short-term rental, home business, urban agriculture, cannabis, etc. And then we have part 3, which is our parking regulations. And then part 4, the definitions. And so definitions are crucial and they are important, but when increasing the user friendliness of a zoning bylaw, they seem to make more sense, almost like an appendix. They're at the back. So you go through, you read the bylaw, and then you refer to the definitions where necessary. The one thing I will say about the parking regulations is there's some detailed future work that is required there, including demand analysis, downtown reviews, and so forth. So we more or less brought forward the parking rates that we have right now. It seemed to make the most sense to stick with that. And then in the future time, we would like to do particularly a downtown parking needs analysis. And so we just weren't able to accomplish that at this time. So I'll go through a summary of the zones, part 1. So bylaw 25, as it stands now, has 59 zones throughout the district of Sechelt. We're able to merge some together, eliminate some that perhaps weren't in use anymore. And so now zoning bylaw 580 has 32 unique zones. And so we've got residential 1 through 5, and also the lower the number, the less intensity of use. So residential 1 would be the outer lying suburban, if you will, for lack of a better word, residential areas, perhaps in the Davis Bay or the far part of West Sechelt. R2 into more of the neighborhoods, so forth. R3 might be smaller lots such as Tyler Heights. R4 and R5 would be in the Sechelt Village, zones that might allow multiple dwellings and so forth. Oh, pardon me. Similarly, we have the same approach with commercial. Commercial 1 would be neighborhood commercial. Commercial 4 would be our downtown commercial zone. Then we've created this commercial 4A zone because it's tied to and connected to commercial 4, but it's a little bit different. And this would be the area north of Dolphin Avenue, Dolphin Street and Wharf Avenue, where you still have a service commercial. There's a blend there, there's a transition, and more mixed use commercial with residential will be introduced over time, but it does contain that unique quasi light industrial commercial service corridor. And we want to recognize that particular area being slightly different than from Dolphin through to Cowrie. And then we have rural 1, rural 2 zones. These are more, rural 1 would be rural residential acreage properties, thinking top of Norwest Bay Road, for example, areas that are not in the agricultural land reserve, but are rural residential living, or pardon me, rural living within a municipality. And then the RU2 would be a little more resource oriented. This might be some of the outer lying areas of land, crown land outside that are owned outside of the fee simple private process. It might be private managed forest lands, such as the Sandy Hook area, for example. And it's a lower impact zone in terms of residential, really not designed for subdivision and multiple dwellings, but really designed for that resource or preservation type use. And then, as mentioned previously, the agricultural zone, the agricultural 1 zone, we just have the 1 at this point, is for properties located within the agricultural land reserve. Key areas of agricultural land reserve in the district of Sechelt would be the Tyson Road area, in and along Field Road, and then of course Upper Mason Road and pieces of Upper Norwest Bay Road. And then finally, we've got the industrial category, light industrial, heavier industrial for the Field Road sawmill, and then I3 would be the airport area. So we distinguish the difference in those zones. And moving on to the next batch, the marine zones. Marine 1 would be that mixed use East Porpoise Bay zone. Marine 2 is the aquaculture zone. It'd be the Chapman Creek hatchery, as well as target marine area in the Tilican Bay neighborhood. And then we also distinguish between the park zones. We call it the PA1 or park conservation, which might be our open fields and nature areas, Hackett Park, Kinnickinnick Park. But then we've also created a zone, a civic community and civic zone, which might include the property that we're located on here, churches, community halls, and so forth. So while there's a similarity between parks and nature spaces, there's also, and community and civic properties, there's also some difference that is recognized in the zoning bylaw and parameters around uses. Then we have the institutional zones, the institutional 1 zone the Trellis Silverstone property, and there's an institutional 2 zone as well, and that would apply to projects that were constructed for a particular purpose and are already built, such as the Arrowhead Center, such as Rain City, a supportive living managed, by something like a BC Housing or a housing society. And then finally, rounding out the zones, the comprehensive development zones. Comprehensive development is a term that's used broadly throughout local governments. It's basically a mixed use zone or site specific zone. So we at present in Zoning Bylaw 25, have 20 CD zones. Some of those CD zones are as simple as a duplex on Pebble Crescent, which can be folded into a residential zone quite easily, or Canadian Tire, for example. Really, it's not comprehensive, it's a singular use. And so some of those CD zones were folded because the uses exist and can be easily matched with other zones. And then we have a list of a few that we thought are important to maintain as CD. Some of those would be examples like Green Court or RTC Shore and Cliff just down the road here, whereupon they're still within development review. Changing the zoning now might have a negative impact in terms of us reviewing and approving developments underway. There's a couple other zones that really are unlikely to be constructed, but there was no clear direction as to what to do with them. The former SSC properties, for example, in fact, retains the zone that dates back to the Silverback development. We understand that there are future plans for that property. We're not presently aware of what they are, so it's best to just leave as was. Similarly, there was an application for a seniors lodge at the top of Medusa a number of years ago, and we have had a number of inquiries with the present owners. We understand that they have ideas that they might like to rezone the property, and it just seemed the most suitable and the most fitting to maintain as a CD zone for now, in a sense like a holding zone until a new application comes forward. Okay, so I did mention the residential zones a little bit already, but I'll dive into that just a little bit deeper here. The map shows the extent of the residential zoning throughout Sechelt. So you can see the outer lying areas would be the lower density, and moving into the village area, the downtown area would be the higher density. And we do have the 5 zones. This one here showing in yellow simply shows all as the same color, but the map attached to the zoning bylaw will show the distinction there. And then the text within the bylaw describes the differences of each of the zones. And then earlier I mentioned the vision plan, albeit from 2007, when we were reviewing and studying the zones. We realized that these pictures, these watercolor pictures designed at that time, really do reflect land use patterns and reflect the zoning. The smaller one in the middle might be the R3 zone, for example. The one at the lower right, a little bit more dense, might be the R5 zone. So it's kind of neat to see these that are within our vision. This is what we are promoting, the vision we have for our community, and to see that reflected in our zoning bylaw really drew a good connection for staff and helped us resonate, understand what it is that we're trying to achieve by drafting these zones. But then we also thought it was important to distinguish between residential zones and residential multiple zones, because as we get into higher density, while it's still a residential use, it's a different form, a different appearance. So we created the RM1 zone, which is residential multiple. That could be as little as duplex 2-unit dwellings, as we're referring to them officially in the bylaw. It could also be townhouses and apartments. And there's a wide range of these throughout Sechelt, particularly in the downtown area. And this provides some density as described in the official community plan. And you can see an example image of what that might look like, as well as the mapping showing the highlighted areas in yellow where this zone is proposed to be located. And then there are a number of mobile home parks, one on Sylvan Park Road, others along the highway, Big Maples, for example. And so we dedicate the RM2 zone to mobile home parks, or I say mobile home, but really modular home is likely the better term. If the Big Maples, for example, has a number of modular units, the mobile is your traditional term, but it's a bit of a dated terminology at this point. And again, I think I described the commercial zones in passing, but C1 neighborhood commercial might be like Mason Place, for example, in West Sechelt. C2 tourist and marine, a lot of that in the Porpoise Bay area. And C3 would be regional commercial, thinking IGA, Wilson Creek Plaza, that area, Canadian Tire, and so forth. We've identified this area along the strip of highway in Davis Bay that might be a little bit of a hybrid between tourist and marine commercial and regional commercial. And I think in advance of second reading, we might rethink that a little bit and propose some changes, just trying to find the right fit. While we don't want to promote necessarily automobile and service center like commercial zoning along the strip in Davis Bay, it's also not exclusively tourist commercial. So we're working on finding the right balance there, and we may suggest some changes the next time we're in front of you. And then, of course, the downtown center and the C4A zone that I referred to earlier. So the downtown center, the C4 zone, would allow residential above as well, in addition to commercial, and that's a standard land use practice both here in Sechelt and in other areas, other municipalities. And then in terms of the land mass, the rural, residential, resource, and agricultural zones really are a significant amount of our community. And it does show that distinction between the urbanizing areas of Sechelt and yet the still quite rural areas of Sechelt and the resource-oriented areas. And this includes everything from the ravine of Chapman Creek to prime suitable agricultural land, to private managed forest lands, to the extremities of our municipality. And so again, RU1 being rural residential, RU2 being resource, and AG1 being the agricultural zone. And so this map is meant to depict that. It's not the specific zoning map. Getting into the specifics shows a little bit more detail. So moving along, again, just showing some images how this might look. And that this will range anything from a water zone, which is just a basic zone that's over the water, respecting moorage and so forth, to our marine mixed use zones, through to our heavy industrial and airport zoning. And there's a number of areas within Sechelt this would be applicable. The map did cut off the Porpoise Bay area the way it's designed here, but of course, East Porpoise Bay and West Porpoise Bay have got some industrial and marine zoning for sure. And then we have a lot of the park zones. Of course, Kinnickinnick Park, Chapman Ravine, Hackett Park would have that park conservation zone, and our civic facilities and institutional facilities. So it all makes up the fabric of our community. There's a number of different areas where these zones will apply. And then I'll conclude the zoning section with a summary of the CD zones. So some of those, as mentioned, are underway and under review, such as CD4, 5, and 6, whereas CD7 zone, there is an application on file known as the Grand Excelsior, moving along quite slowly on that, and other zones such as CD1 and CD2, unlikely to ever develop as proposed, but it just felt like the best fit to carry those zones forward. And so that was the summary of the zones, and then as parts 3 and 4 are general use and parking. And so the general regulations, they provide some color, some detail, some background to the bylaw. And we note that some of them, such as short-term rental, we of course still have some work to do, and that'll be coming back to council, and we're going to have to weave that together. There was an email from an update from this third space planning group that suggests that short-term rentals might be better called residential guest accommodations. I'm unsure about that. We've done a significant amount of engagement. People know short-term rentals, people know STRs. So we'll make sure that we use the right terminology or that our definitions align accordingly. But there's a number of issues that we simply can't solve at this time that are bigger. The cannabis issue, we understand there's a lot of frustration in the community. There's frustration here in this office. What can we do? What does the federal government need to do to provide that to be more workable for municipalities? Shipping containers, I mean, we see the proliferation of them. They're everywhere. What are we going to do about that? We do have some regulations here, but and we're going to bring those in, but it really feels like there's a deeper issue that we need to try and tackle when it comes to some of those issues. And again, noting the need for further detail in our parking, but do the best we can for now. And we've supplemented it, but fundamentally, it's the regulations we've had in place for some time. And then thinking forward to next steps, here we are today, April, Committee of the Whole. We'll be placing it on the agenda next week's council for consideration of first reading, pending outcome of today. And we do have some engagement plans. We have a web page on the Your Say at Sechelt.ca page. We've got some great level of detail on there in terms of the high level summary, the zoning bylaw. We're going to be working on some short engagement survey questions, preference questions, or likelihood of building an accessory dwelling if you're now zoned for one. We'll be able to refresh questions on a weekly basis and so forth. We've got a few plans underway there. We are preparing referrals. We've sent out a link to the overview summary so far, but I'd be pleased to share the zoning bylaw with folks as well. So we're working on that. And on May 24th and 25th, we have 2 virtual meetings aligned where we'll do a presentation similar to this. One of those sessions will be during the day, one during the evening. And then on May 26th, we have the Seaside Center booked, and we'll have at least 2 presentations at set times, as well as plenty of ample opportunity for smaller group conversations or one-on-one conversations and so forth. And so I propose this timeline here. This timeline is possible. It would be like best case scenario, if you will. It requires continuous development and coordination along the way. And so it's entirely possible that we could be reporting back shortly after the engagement sessions in May at some point in June. Should council desire, we could have a public hearing in July. Post-public hearing, we would need to seek approval from the Ministry of Transportation. We will be preparing maps showing zoning changes within 800 meters of the highway. That's what the ministry would be looking at when considering approval. We'll do our best to engage and include them along the way. But I do feel that it's contingent on a couple of things. Council direction, of course, but it's also contingent upon referral responses from provincial agencies. Everybody has priorities and timelines, and we'll do the best we can to match ours with the referral recipients, reaching out to Sechelt Nation, neighborhood associations, SCREDO, SDBA, Chamber of Commerce, so forth. So there's going to be a lot of work ahead of us here at the staff level to keep this moving along, but I just wanted to show that as a possibility. And then finally, final slide. So the recommendations. So what we're looking for here today at Committee of the Whole is a discussion and acceptance of this draft, and then placing it on next week's agenda for first reading to make it an official draft bylaw, in which case we'll immediately commence referral of the bylaw and the overview summary, as well as our engagement plans. And so it's been a long, difficult project for us and some of our predecessors, but I think the challenges we've had along the way make this opportunity for advancement and success all the more exciting. So we're hoping to bring some light to our community vision here and move forward. And I thank you.
Thank you, Director Allen. Just before we get started, can I have a motion to receive the report? And a second, and all in favor? Okay, I'm not sure if you're still there, Director Allen.
Yes.
I'm not sure if are you coming? Do you want me to give you time to come down, or do you want to take questions in your office?
That would be the preference of the committee. I am fine with coming down if you like, and also able to stay here.
I think you can probably stay there.
Okay.
I mean, not that that sounded terrible. Strike that from the minutes. Mayor of the month is not that rude. Anyways, moving on. Okay, all joking aside. Questions from council, please. Let me see if I can see everybody. Okay, Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I just wanted to kick it off by thanking Director Allen and the rest of the planning team for putting this together. I think that's going to be a really big step towards modernization of what might be our most important bylaw. It's going to provide a lot of clarity to current property owners about what they can do with their properties, as well as what their future options are and what may happen to the land around them. These clear categories have a clear progression, so you can kind of see how they increase in density as you go up in the residential numbers and all the numbers. So you can really slot future development into them fairly intuitively, which is really nice to see. And I'm hoping that the need for spot zoning will be greatly reduced. So again, it provides that predictability for our community moving forward. There's also some really nice things in this zoning bylaw to help with our housing crisis. There's been some outdated provisions, such as how small a house can be, and a restriction on renting out more than one unit in a house. Those are gone, which is really nice to see, as well as I see some provision for duplexes and much more opportunities for detached accessory dwellings, which are both quite exciting. There's even opportunity for some properties to have 3 units on them legally. So that's a lot of gentle density, which I think will make a big difference in our community. There's enhanced sustainability, water course setbacks, green energy provisions, enhanced options for backyard farming, and clear protections for farmland and parkland. So there's a lot of really good stuff in this bylaw. So I just wanted to say thank you, and let's work towards getting this thing passed.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Oh, Councillor McLean has his hand up again.
Oh, I see the mayor, so she can jump in. I have a million questions, but they'll be addressed over time.
Okay, Mayor Seegers.
Thank you. I think Councillor McLean said most of the comments around, what we're seeing. And yes, thank you for all the work you've done. I look forward to hearing what the community has to say. I know when there was a draft that came out a number of years ago, and the community really weighed in. Their feedback, their inputs are going to be really important in making sure that this document reflects what the areas need to see. And it will be a document we'll be using for many years to come. So I just look forward to the next steps, and it'll be interesting to see what the community associations have to say and the individual community members. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLean.
Yeah, thank you. Question for Director Allen. In the agricultural zone, there is, it's very detailed. And I suspect a lot of those details come from the Agricultural Land Act. So I'm wondering what happens when that act changes, and if it is a prudent approach to be this specific, or can we just rely on the provincial rules for agriculture?
Well, that's a great question, if I may, Chair Rowe. Sorry, I jumped in quickly there, but it is a great question. I think that there's a couple of values in highlighting the uses permitted. Number one, it identifies that these properties are in fact in agricultural land reserve, and that agriculture is not only a permitted use, but a priority use. I think what we have now, when agricultural land reserve is designated as RR1 in Zoning Bylaw 25, it's viewed as rural residential land rather than agricultural land. So having those specifics in the bylaw really highlights to property owners, and importantly, prospective property owners, what it is that they're looking at. So we do like that. Number two, the land use regulations from the agricultural land reserve enable a number of things. And we're able to not only highlight them, but we can identify community preference. In some cases, we can choose to further regulate beyond what is permitted if the community preference is a certain way, such as the size of a lounge or a picnic area at a alcohol production facility. For example, I know that's a conversation that's been had up and down the Sunshine Coast over the last few years. And so it allows us to strengthen and enhance our approach to farmland preservation. I suppose that the downside is when some of these regulations change, they're not always done so with a great deal of engagement with municipalities and local governments. And then sometimes we find out via an email circular from the Land Commission, and then our bylaw is then dated. But they are changes that can be made. Of course, we can bring forward a bylaw amendment suggesting changes to upkeep and modernize, and it doesn't have to wait 35 years, such as the case here. You know, we could bring in an annual monitoring program, or in some cases, our zoning might not apply if something has been specifically now out regulated from the agricultural land reserve. The provincial rules would ultimately apply.
Any follow-up, Councillor McLean? No, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Lamb.
I'd just like to look at setbacks. I guess I'm just sowing a seed here to get things started as we move along. So, you know, in the commercial zone, we have 1.5 meters setback from the front, 3 meters from the rear line, whatever. And then when you go over to the industrial zone, you know, they ask for a 9 meter setback, and that's heavy. Yeah, 9 meter on the light industrial and 10 meter on the heavy. And the industrial buildings are held to account, you know, for you know, they have to look very nice and fit in with the community. And they're usually asking for a green space and everything. And I think a 9 meter setback, because there are half acre lots in the community. And I think a 9 meter setback is too much. And so I don't know if you can ask for a variance on those, but I think we should look at that. And one of the things about industrial properties is lots of times, you know, there's opportunities for apprenticeships and journeymen, and it's usually you know, fairly good wages that come from those properties. So yeah, just I don't know. Yeah, just sort of sowing a seed to keep that. See what happens there. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Oh, Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I just had a similar one to Councillor Lamb regarding setbacks. So I think that's something that we might want to keep an eye on moving forward. The one that I'm concerned with is looking at the accessory dwelling setbacks within some of the residential zones. So for example, in the R2 zone, you need a 5-meter setback from the rear and front lot lines. So I'd be interested to hear from the community what they think is acceptable. Do we want some of these accessory suites right in front of a house, close to the road? Do we want, and then is there a difference between a rear setback and a side setback? Because our side setbacks tend to be less than that 5 meters. So I'm looking forward to hearing from the community what kind of setbacks they would like to see for accessory structures or accessory dwellings, because I think those do present a huge opportunity within the zoning bylaw.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
Chair Rowe, if I may, when the opportunity arises.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yes, Director Allen.
Thank you, because I realize I omitted a key point from my presentation that I wanted to cover, and it just slipped my mind. It was regarding the density bonus provision. I did want to talk about this. We presently have a density bonus in Zoning Bylaw 25, and it was our goal to modernize it and improve it. But it was also our goal, of course, to match Zoning Bylaw 580 to the official community plan. So sometimes these aren't entirely congruent, because I think we recognize that in the downtown area, in the C4 zone, for example, or the RM1 zone, the density provisions in the OCP are a little bit too low, and it is something we'd like to, after this process, look to and modernize. So what we want to do is encourage this density bonus where you have more density in exchange for on or off-site amenities that make the adjacent neighborhood and the community a little bit better. But we weren't able to come to a firm conclusion in time. We were working with Urban Systems, and they've got land economists and so forth. And we weren't able to nail that down perfectly before this bylaw draft was ready to go. And so the policy that we have there will change. You'll see something different when we come back next time. We're working on it, and Sam Yulhog, our senior policy planner, is doing some research here, and we just weren't able to get that one quite right, and it's very much front and center on our radar. And when we come back to you, and potentially in June, we expect to see something a little more detailed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLean.
Yeah, Director Allen jumped in front of my question there, but I just wanted to speak to how important this is. Setting clear expectations for how our downtown is going to develop is probably one of the most fundamental things that we need to look at. Right now, it provides the C4 zone, which is much of our downtown, has a density limit of 50 units per hectare and a height limit of 12 meters. So that can be added to with this policy, but since it's not in the zoning bylaw, it's not quite as clear. So I really hope that we can pin this down, make it much more clear within the zoning bylaw, so we can provide that transparency to our community and provide that expectation of how our downtown is going to develop.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Did I see? Oh, I thought you were making a move. Yeah, go ahead. Mayor Seegers.
I'd like to move the other recommendations on page 2.
Do I have a seconder to move those recommendations? And all in favor? Thank you. Thank you again, staff, for continuing this project. This is very exciting.
And similarly, thank you as well. We really appreciate the support.
Thanks. Go team. Moving on to 5.2, Asset Management Policy, a report from Kevin Durkee, is that how you say it? Our new GIS Asset Management Technician. Over to you.
Move to accept.
Hi. I will just share my screen to start.
And I'll just introduce the topic once we have the presentation there.
Okay.
Maybe while the presentation is getting ready, I'll ask for a motion to receive the report. And a second, all in favor? Thank you. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I've spoken about this many times in the past at past presentations, the importance of having an asset management program and a policy that goes with that. We view that as potentially being a requirement for grant funding in the future, that local governments have these in place. We don't know down the road, it could be legislated as it is in Ontario to have an asset management plan. So this is one of the first steps in that process today. So we're going to be talking about the policy that we're bringing forward. Next slide.
Yeah.
So I'll
Sure.
so there's several asset classes, and each asset class will have its own asset management journey. So we'll just go through some of those asset classes. So we have our facilities. We'll have an asset management plan for that. Wastewater, drainage, fleet, our vehicles, and IT systems, and land as well, and recreational, which is our parks. And also some of our cultural facilities, which I think includes facilities like Seaside and our other municipal buildings that we own. And in addition to that is transportation, which we're all familiar with, is our roads and sidewalks, and now our active transportation infrastructure that's expanding. So you've seen this presentation before, but I just want to reiterate again that asset management is one tool towards creating a financially sustainable municipality in terms of the services we deliver and the infrastructure we maintain. And how we do that is so right now we have a current level of funding, and we have to compare that against the funding that would be needed to replace all our assets at the end of their service life. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to bridge that sustainability gap by containing costs. So that's through things like renewing our pipes through cured in place pipelining or doing other preventative type maintenance. And then at the same time, we've been increasing revenues through our 3% infrastructure levy. And so we've been building up reserves to address our aging assets, and we're trying to get to a sustainability sweet spot. So that's an introduction. I think part of the journey on asset management, and one of the big steps, is hiring Mr. Kevin Durkee as our GIS and asset management technician, who since he's joined our organization has been advancing a lot of the things on the road that we need to take to get to asset management, as well as also enhancing our current GIS systems. And I've gotten a ton of great feedback from staff who've used his skills already. So with that, I'd like to hand over the presentation to Mr. Durkee.
Thanks, Director Dillon, and thank you, Council. So I bring up this next slide. Is one that I've heard has been presented before. This is from Asset Management BC. And this is, again, speaking to everything that Director Dillon has said, shows a journey of what asset management can look like in an organization. So starting at the assessing phase, assessing our asset management practices. What ones do we have? Do they need to be updated? Do they need to be changed? Does it reflect new technology that's around? What are the current states of our assets? And then as we start to move from assessing, we get into planning. You'll see asset management policy there, as well as the strategy, but also specific asset management plans and integrated long-term plans. So how does this fit in with other policies? So on and so forth. And then the final phase of this is implementing. And you'll notice at the center of this is the sustainable service delivery. Now, we are at this phase currently where we are assessing our state of assets. We've determined what practices we have or what practices we need to work on or what practices we need to create. We have also been implementing certain things. So, for example, we've been working with our facilities to show the difference between a work order and a service request and how important that is, because a work order talking about the work that we have planned, a service request talking about work that's driven from a request. And so to manage both of these things is a great thing to be able to come before council and to plan for. So this is an ongoing process of implementing our asset management practices. So that never stops. That is a continuation. But today, again, what we are focusing on is the asset management policy. Now, just as a bit of a roadmap as well, after the asset management policy, as we were talking about today, this is really laying the groundwork for an asset registry. And so that is going to be our next focus. But again, kind of to the slide, the big focus there to start is assessing our current state of our assets so that we know which ones we have, which ones we potentially need to go out and collect, or which ones we need to maybe collect in a different way that we have previously. And actually, I went too fast, but I said there that it's a 5-year renewal. And you'll see that in the policy that we will come back to this every 5 years. We'll kind of go through this process of assessing, planning, implementing, assessing, planning, implementing in a 5-year process. So what is the purpose and importance of this policy? Well, this sets an organizational standard tied to the District of Sechelt instead of the individual position. So this is saying that as a District of Sechelt, we take asset management seriously, and that it doesn't matter who is in the council chair or who is in the administration chair, that as an organization, from now on, asset management will be at the forefront of our thinking. Now, it also determines how we integrate this policy into other policies. So obviously, some of the financial ones seem very clear. However, we can also talk about planning and how that affects, for example, the zoning bylaw that we've been talking about today. This is not meant to be, the policy is not meant to be a step-by-step guide. It is meant to be an overarching document that gives us direction and gives us guidance to make sure that we hit key principles. So if we are a little bit too step-by-step in the policy, it can hinder us in the sense of if we want to change certain things, we would have to go back and amend the policy and amend the policy. Policy is meant to fix our gaze on a certain target. And so that's again, the objective here. Now, one thing the policy very clearly does go into is the roles of council, the roles of CEO, the roles of administration. And through our asset management steering committee and conversations with the senior management team, as well as with the CAO directly, that structure that you see in the document is what we decided upon. And this creates accountability for not only us as an organization, but as a council and backwards and forwards to the staff, but also to the residents, saying, again, this is a priority, and they can ask us how we are doing in certain respects because we have metrics that we are keeping, and we are keeping this, again, forefront, and it's important. And this is right on track with other municipalities in BC. So we are by no means behind. We are actually quite in step, I would say, maybe even one foot ahead of the curve. I would say a lot of larger municipalities have these things in place, and medium to smaller size municipalities are either right in the process of doing this, or they just passed them in the past few years. So this is actually a great spot for us as a district of Sechelt because we can consult a lot of other places that are either just getting going or maybe just behind us. And so I've already been in contact with several different municipalities in regards to our policy, but also their own. And so there's a great collaboration that happens here. Yeah, so that concludes Director Dillon and I's presentation. If you have any specific questions about the policy, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I love this stuff. I'm a policy nerd. So seeing a guiding document, at least beginning stages of this, is great. And I thank you for that work. And if you told me 4 years ago I would ever be excited about sewer assets and want to know more, I would have told you you were out of your mind. But anyways, it's been a great learning for me being on council around what goes on underneath our roads. And I was a bit horrified to learn how much we didn't actually know about it. So I love to see this come before us. So council, any questions or comments? Mayor Seegers.
Thank you. I'm going to steal some stuff that Councillor McLean's been saying for years since he's been on council, and that's around service plans. So one of the things that we don't know is when we don't know the state of a lot of our assets, and so we don't know what kind of service we need to do them. So that directly ties into budgeting. So I think this is something the community. Well, they didn't really know much about it before. I think Director Dillon's actually been doing a lot of education of the community, and the community, I think, is behind this because they want us to be able to tell them this is the state of our assets and this is what it's going to cost to maintain them, to fix them, to replace them. So I like that we're actually doing this too. So thank you for the work.
Other comments or questions? Councillor McLean.
Yeah, Mayor Seeger stole my words, so I'll leave that and dive into a question. So I'm just interested in how we make this a success in an organizational sense. One key part of that, I believe, is the Asset Management Steering Committee, which is referenced on page 173. So I'm just wondering if I could hear a little bit more about what the vision is for this community and how they would facilitate asset management within the whole organization.
Thank you for the question through the chair. I'll defer the steering committee question to Mr. Durkee, who's been at the forefront of leading that committee.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor McLean. Yeah, so that committee just began in January, met for the first time, and then met again in April, just a couple of weeks ago. And the purpose of that committee, yes, is a real boots on the ground type of, these are the things that we're doing, discussion and moving things forward. Now, this first year, there's a lot to get through. So, however, the way that we're structuring it is we're meeting every 2 months, having about a 2-hour meeting, and who that includes is it's actually quite organizationally representative. So it's very broad. So we've got planners, we've got the manager of building, we have 2 people from finance, we have our parks officer, Jamie, we have Christine Miller, we have John Devison. So it's a very broad and wide-ranging. Also our IT manager as well, Hash Manikim. So yeah, it is quite a large group, but it's quite good. We've been able to make some good progress in terms of categorization and yeah, standards. And so this policy was created out of that. It was a subcommittee out of that committee. And so that's where that has come from.
I'd just like to tag on to that response by saying that, and this might sound a bit cliche, but asset management is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's going to take some time. And when we say what would success look like and how do we report back on success, one of the things I want to do is in our financial plan with our capital program, when we present that, is have asset report cards for each one of our asset classes to tell us where we're at and how we're faring with each of those assets. So in order to do that, we need to know the condition of each asset. We need to do, for example, camera inspections on pipes. And so once we have that, we can start creating these asset report cards. And then we also have the tools available through CityWorks to start monitoring key performance indicators. How many times have we gone out to respond to, breaks in our sanitary system? Like, we can set those up, but like I said, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, and we're at the early stages, and this policy is one of the first steps in a long journey. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, this is, I'm quite happy to see this happen in the District of Sechelt. Over the years, there's been too much information that's lost, and when you go from council to council, everybody comes in with a different, different project, may I say, that is dear to their heart. So this hopefully will put some continuity into this situation. That's about all. But you can buy good shoes locally. That's good. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Mayor Seegers.
I will move recommendation number 2 on page 165, that the asset management policy number 2.10.3 be adopted by council as presented.
And seconded? And all in favor? Thank you. And thank you, Director Dillon and Mr. Durkee. Kevin. Okay, moving on to the next item. Our 2022-2026 5-year financial plan information. May I have a motion to receive the report, please, and seconded, and all in favor? And I will turn this over to Director Douglas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is really a short report and some background information on really wrapping up the budget cycle for 2022 and preparing the 22 to 2026 5-year financial plan. Included in the report is just the motions that council made back in December to send staff off to put together the 5-year financial plan. And obviously, the thing that takes kind of the longest for us to put all together is any information from year-end. Year-end and budget, they're almost come to an end at the same time. So, any projects that are carried over or any operating funds that we want to move from one year to the next year, they all come together basically in April. And so, we have to, we delay presenting the 5-year financial plan for that information from year end. But I just wanted to, go over a couple of things with council and our committee of the whole prior to seeing the bylaws for next week. So we built this financial plan based on information we provided previously to committee of the whole, and that would include the 5.08% increase for operations and additional 3% for capital. We did identify $453,300 in cost savings from the 2021 actual to move into the 2022 budget. And there were a couple of minor changes to the operating budget. Archaeology is becoming a bigger and bigger item for us at the operational level as well as the capital level. And so we increased budgets in operations for public works and parks to $30,000 for archaeology. I mean, if we're replacing a tree or, or digging a tree in a sensitive area, we have to have an archaeologist on site. And so we need to have some money set aside. And the other one was we'd hired 3 people and we had to just add some training money for those folks for this year. So that was really the only adjustments. And we were able to do that within the realm of the 5.08% increase. In sewer, there was a motion previously to not only increase the sewer user fees by 6.2%, but also the septage fees. That bylaw has gone through already for the septage, and you'll see the sewer user fee bylaw next week, along with the 5-year financial plan and the tax rate bylaw. And that was from a committee recommendation back in December. So I wanted to move now to taxation. And so I'm at the bottom of page 177, where we start to talk about taxation. We're going to reference the chart at the top of 178 quite a bit here now. Just that whole paragraph written there is really about the chart on the top of page 178. But so a couple of things. We had a significant increase again to the tax roll value due to market conditions. And so what that is based off is house sales values. So we saw a 35% increase due to the market in residential and a 15.13% increase due to market in commercial. And so when that happens, the standard price of a house or a commercial property are going up at 2 different rates. And, residents are still leapfrogging how much a commercial property goes up within the district of Sechelt. And you'll see later why that becomes a factor in setting the tax rates. But overall assessment, due to construction, which is part of this document, construction and residential went up 1.24%, and commercial or business other only 0.22%. So the most of your new construction is in residential, and has been for quite some time. So I just wonder if there's any questions on how the assessment went up in the district of Sechelt. Okay. So now we're going to refer to the second chart that's on page 178, and a couple things there. So residential, it holds the assessments in residential hold 94% of the assessment in Sechelt itself. On the tax side, the residential picks up 85.4% of the taxes, while business picks up 12.3%. And the other classes, although we get some from each one of them, those are the 2 most significant, taxing classes that we have. So through the budget and through the increases due to market and new construction, you'll see that we've set the tax rates here in both the third column out, the one that says 2022 tax rates. And the other item that goes along with that is the class multiples. And the class multiples have always been a topic of concern at council. And, I agree that's an important topic. And you'll see there that the business other, which is the one that seems to attract a lot of attention, increased this year from 2.35 times the residential rate to 2.73 times the residential rate. Now that's purely due to this market changing. You're not pulling any more tax from commercial. You're not relieving them of any tax. You're just taking what they got last year and you're adding, their share of the tax that they would do, and this is how the calculation falls out. This is probably the lowest tax rates we've had in Sechelt in a long time, and that's because the assessments continue to grow at quite a significant rate. So I just wanted to highlight that one for committee of the whole, because that's always a topic of concern with the class multiples. Is there any questions on that?
Any questions, council? I don't see any hands. We're good.
Okay, on to page 179. We have some tax examples here. And we'll start at the top one, which is, this was based, I've used the same residence from year to year now for 2 or 3 years, so that we're just kind of following how the increases go. And so when you go through this one, so what I've included here is all information I had at the time of the report deadline. So I did not get the school tax numbers until Monday, Tuesday this week. And the same with the fire district. I just got those tax rates just 2 days ago. So I've just eliminated them so, we can just deal with what the known information is. So you can see under the municipal 2001 to 2002, the first residence valued at $865,000, 8.32% for this property. I won't really highlight the SRD and hospital and those items, but you can see that there is some movement going on there. The regional district and hospital district, they have fixed class multiples. So from year to year, the multiples don't change like they've been changing with the municipal side. And so when you get this big lift of assessment due to market in residential and a lesser one in commercial, you're actually seeing a tax shift moving from commercial over to residential. So overall, the commercial properties will see a bit of a reduction, or they'll pay less tax to those jurisdictions this year than they did last year. Okay. And so then we move down to below the kind of the line where we go into utilities, and we're going to talk about the sewer. So the parcel tax on sewer stays the same. So there's 0% increase. Garbage user fees increased from $216 to $243, which is a 13% increase. And pardon me for a second. And the sewer user fees, 6.2% increase, so $578 to $614 on this property, 6% or 6.2. It is not rounding it up. And so overall, this property is paying 8.3% increase overall from 1 year to the next. And that's it's a $330 difference. Excuse me one more time. The next property is a lower value property within the district of Sechelt. And you'll see that I'm just going to highlight it right away. The garbage has gone from $0 to $243. And that's due to the fact that this would be like either a apartment type assessment or multifamily type assessment. And in previous years, they have not paid us for garbage. They've gone out to contract for garbage individually. However, with this change of garbage pickup going to the 3 streams, the district is now picking up their garbage. And so now they have to pay the fee to the district. And so although it looks like, oh, they're getting a 19.5% increase overall, they're actually losing the contract that they've had to pay for years. So yes, taxes have gone up, but their strata would be having less expenses. So once again, you know, a 8.32% increase for municipal taxes, and in this case, it's about $45. And going down, parcel taxes stay the same. The garbage fee is now new, and their sewer user fees have gone up. In this case, about $22. So this property here will be seeing just about a $360, $80 increase, but that's a lot of that is the new garbage charge. So you eliminate that, you're down to about $140 for municipal taxation. If we go to the top of page 180, we're looking at a property value that's got quite a bit more, 8.32% increase to the taxes, user fees for garbage increased to $243, user fee for sewer $614, and so overall this property will see about a $440 increase overall. The last 2 examples we have here for commercial, lower value commercial. And if we go to the municipal one, municipal rate, this property is seeing a 6.4% increase, or just under $300. Once again, we don't charge garbage. We don't pick up garbage with commercial properties, so there's no garbage right here. Parcel tax stays the same. User fees have gone up, that 6.2%. And so overall, this commercial property is paying just under $300 more than last year. And finally, on the top of page 181, a larger valued commercial property. And the municipal tax going up 6.484%, just due to assessment. And in this case, for municipal purposes, it's very close to a $400 increase. You'll see here is where the SRD Recreation Hospital, you see credits here. So they're actually paying less towards those services, and that's due to that class multiple being frozen at 2.45 to residential 1. And then just going down the rest of the way, so overall, this property, commercial property, you see a 3.12% increase, which is about $260. So the information provided in this report will be on the web page for viewing. And so this next page, attachment 1 on page, I don't have a page number, I'm sorry, 182, is your first look at the 5-year financial plan. And This is a consolidated financial plan, so it includes the general operating fund as well as sewer. And it includes all the discussions that we've held through the budget process in November and December. And as per the community charter, it must equal 0 at the bottom, which it does. And going outward, of course, the plan is a 5-year plan. Included in this package, we have the 5-year capital plan as well as backup information, and the totals from the capital match what is in the 5-year financial plan. The tax rates from 2022, 23, 24, 25 do include a 3% capital, continue with capital, as well as a moderate amount for operations. And that is the unknown. And so for now, it would be anywhere between, over those years, would be between 3 and 5% for operations, and which makes, the 5-year financial plan balance. But it does have the 3% for capital. And and then attachment 2 is the 5-year capital plan. And although we've gone through 2022 with Committee of the Whole, the 5-year financial plan is always a bit of a moving target. We know how much money we hope to have going forward, and so the projects that are listed here are projects that staff see are priority coming up. That doesn't mean that they'll happen in that year, but that's the year that they're planned. A lot of the DCC projects that, are in the DCC bylaw are included in here. So, we've looked at other policy or other bylaws to make sure that we're covering them as we should be covering them. Attachment 3, which I'm sorry, I don't have the page on my page numbers. 192 is the tax rate, the schedule for the tax rate bylaw, which we'll see next week, provided here for your convenience ahead of our meeting. Attachment 4 is the schedule for the sewer user fees. And you'll see this schedule attached to the sewer user fee bylaw. If council has any questions or would like more detail on anything, please feel free. Thank you.
Questions from anybody? Uh-oh. Let me check online. I don't see any hands. Oh, sorry. You got to do it while I'm looking at you. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, I was just wondering, on the sewer side of things, will we be just adding a percentage to the Seashell Nation's sewer for this year, and then
6.2%.
6.2%.
And as we get more data on flow, then that will also be calculated.
Okay. And then also on top of whatever the increases are here, that we also have to, a resident would have to be aware of the regional district and any other institutions that put their piece on. Thank you.
Yes, exactly. Oh, I want to make comment too that the 75,000 we've added for affordable housing is also continued outward in this 5-year financial plan.
Any other questions from council? Oh, one more from Councillor Lamb.
Just wondering, would you have knowledge of where that affordable housing, what the balance in that account is at this moment?
Through the year-end process, I do, but I don't have it on me now, no.
And at the 0.75, that'll add about $80,000 to it.
Yet 75,000 is being taxed and transferred to the reserve.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. Seeing none, thank you very much for that. And I will ask for a motion to adjourn. And seconded, and all in favor? Thank you. And I will open it